Hello again, you're watching Sky News. President Obama has asked Congress to delay a vote on military strikes against Syria. He confirmed that military options are still on the table, but has committed to a new round of diplomacy. Let's talk to Republican Congressman Fortenberry. He is a former member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Thank you for joining us here on Sky News this afternoon. Has the US been outmanoeuvred by Russia?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that again, Kay?
Has the United States been outmanoeuvred by Russia?
Well, I don't think so. Obviously, there's very deep concern here in the United States as to whether or not we're going to undertake a unilateral military strike. I've been opposed to this for a number of days now, way before these diplomatic developments. I think most people are hopeful, if it's real, that a Russian-led diplomatic solution or some other convergence of diplomatic initiatives actually create some result to stop the savagery of Assad without further destabilizing the country. But the real issue for us here, and apparently for you in Great Britain, is the fact that unilateral military action has extraordinary consequences, and it compels the United States once again to be on the lead, allowing the rest of the responsible community of nations to hide behind our military engagement efforts. So many people here are very, very concerned about this, and if there's a diplomatic solution to be found, that's appropriate to approach that. But having this whole play set up with around the construct of a strike by the United States and the United States alone is not something that people generally support, and I have deep and grave concerns about.
But as far as diplomacy is concerned, certainly Russia seems to be leading the way as far as the international community is concerned. Just this afternoon, Russia said that it's given the US its plan for placing Syrian chemical weapons under international control, telling the United States what should be done.
Well, if we would have expended all of this energy, both here at home in the United States, as well as the entire international community, of placing the blame on the key actors in this whole drama, in this sad, sad drama, the Russians, for instance, the international coalition could have placed this at their doorstep and perhaps pressured the Russians to come to this diplomatic negotiating posture much sooner. That's part of where the key blame for this lies. And for the United States to simply undertake a unilateral military action allows the rest of the communities to hide behind our military might, and that's not proper and appropriate. This demands an international solution, so it's been very fluid. This development is welcome, certainly, but I think if we would have all focused on pressuring the Russians to begin with, we might have come to some sort of resolution or made this even more robust and vibrant prior to this time.
So how would you like your president to react to the words from the Russians this afternoon?
Well, first of all, to the president's credit, he asked Congress for approval of any military strike, and that's the right thing to do. I do credit him with that. But this is highly controversial in the United States. The United States, we as a country, have expended ourselves in all types of conflicts to try, in the name of international stability, to keep things in good order, to promote human rights, the proper form of development, and to hopefully bring about more just governing structures. Bashar al-Assad, in using chemical weapons against his own people, has violated a clear international norm. It's an act of barbarism and savagery. So the United States is not going to sit by idly while this happens, but neither are we going to be pushed into a military confrontation, which has unknown outcomes, could further destabilize the situation, and make the grave implications for very innocent people who are already so much affected and wounded by this even worse. So this is an international problem, not the United States problem alone. So that being said, diplomatic dynamics that seem to be unfolding, we'll see if they're real or if this is gimmickry, but they are welcome.
As far as the president's speech overnight was concerned, the speech is primarily talking about Syria. It hasn't really been received perhaps with the acclaim that he would have hoped for. Some commentators suggesting that he looks a weaker Democrat president than even Jimmy Carter. Is his standing being increasingly weakened on the international stage now?
Look, we have resisted for a very long time, with the exception of providing humanitarian aid to the peoples affected by the Syrian conflict, which is an appropriate response for the United States. Resisted getting drawn into this. But it does bring into questions broader strategies, and simply lobbing a few Tomahawk missiles and hoping for an outcome that pressures Assad, creates a recalculation by him whether or not he uses chemical weapons in the future, could actually implicitly side us with this rebel movement, many of whom we don't know much about. They kill innocent people as well. And the more moderate elements of that, can you really answer the question of that movement? Can you really answer the question as to whether or not they are capable of forming some new just governing structures that is going to protect the rights of ancient peoples such as the Christian population and other minorities are there? Can you expect an outcome of some sort of flourishing democracy? I think not. So simply setting up the play as to whether or not the United States will get involved by a military strike or not has been the wrong framework for this entire debate. It's the wrong set of working premises. The international community is responsible for pressuring Assad, and we should be actually pointing the finger at the Russians and demanding, because they are so complicit in all of this, they are so entangled in this whole affair, that they actually act on behalf of international stability. The United States in America is very tired of other people profiting from our pain and sacrifice. We've expended ourselves really since World War II as being a sole power for trying to, albeit imperfectly at times, expended ourselves to try to stabilize international institutions and create some form of peace and allow for the flourishing of human rights and proper development and just governing structures. But we cannot play that role by ourselves. Look at your own vote in the House of Commons. Clearly you have a great division in your own society, but pointing the finger to the United States and saying it's our problem, you must act, not only sets us up to being further drawn into a conflict where there is no outcomes that seem to be clear, but then you'll turn around and place the blame on us as the rest of the international community would if things go really wrong. So this is a very unworkable situation, and so we look forward to continuing to gather international support and other players emerging that could actually pressure Assad, stop his savagery, and maybe lead to some new forms of governing structures in Syria that are consistent with governing principles that protect the innocent and human rights, maybe have some democratic component going forward. But this is very murky at the moment.
To what extent, though, then, has the President brought that on himself? He was the one that drew the red line last August, isn't he, when he said, if I find that chemical weapons have been used in an attack, that is my red line. That wasn't the international community that said that. It was the President of the United States that said that.
I agree with you. It's a problematic statement. It framed the issue up, and it left it up to him to determine what that red line is. And so launching a few tomahawks might satisfy that red line rhetoric, but it does not satisfy a long-term outcome which it increases international stability, nor does it direct other international players to be a component, an essential component of this, and it distracts us from the real issue of trying to get people who are complicit in this, such as the Russians, to actually act on behalf of justice and international stability.
How do you, final question, Congressman, I know that you're a very busy man. We appreciate you taking the time to talk to us here on Sky News in London this afternoon. How do you see the situation resolving itself?
Well, that is an open-ended question. And again, it is not going to be resolved by a unilateral military action, which I oppose and many Americans oppose. We're very fatigued by all of this. We're not sure of the outcomes. We will get drawn into a conflict, allowing the rest of the international community to hide behind our military might and then blame us if something goes wrong. So clearly that's not the fullness or even perhaps a partial answer here. This is an international problem which must be solved by the entire international community. Okay, so we must let you go. Thank you so much for joining us on Sky News. As I said, we do appreciate you taking the time. Thank you for having me. Pleasure talking. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff Fortenberry, Congressman, former member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee and a Republican.